Okay, and now we can actually say that it's official. Today is the day. It's the beginning of the European Educational Leadership Week. My name is Daniel Wiśniewski, and I will be your master of ceremonies for this initial session, the opening ceremony of the European Educational Leadership Week. You have heard just a message that this meeting is being recorded, so whatever you say, it's on tape. Today, well, first of all, we're going to open 3 days, intensive 3 days of webinars, discussions, debates about educational leadership, about education. And the discussion cannot be more timely, as we have just last week heard about a new vision, a vision on the Union of Skills. Today, I will be asking our colleagues from the Commission, how do they see the role in education sector and education as such in that new vision? So I have with me the Director General of the Directorate General for Education and Culture, Ms. Pia, and now I have to pronounce it correctly, Ahlenkilde Hansen, who is the Director General for Education, Culture, and I feel youth as well. Pia,
sports
and sports indeed. So Pia, thanks a lot for being here with us. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation. And we would like to, well, ask you for your initial address on that matter.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. Absolutely delighted on my part to join you all online to launch this second edition of the European Educational Leadership Week. I'm pleased to be part of the week again this year, not least because it coincides with a milestone moment for our European education and skills community, as you just indeed referred to. Because just a few days ago, Executive Vice President Roxana Mînzatu indeed unveiled the Commission's Union of Skills strategy. And the Union of Skills, it picks up the call from former Italian Prime Minister and President of the European Central Bank, that you all know very well, Mario Draghi, to step up the EU's action to equip people better with high quality skills and thereby helping to reinvigorate the EU's competitiveness. In his words, we are lacking a strategy for how to keep pace in an increasingly cutthroat race, as he calls it, for leadership in new technologies. And Draghi was very, let's say, he put bold words on it when he outlined the existential challenge that the EU faces. And he made clear that if we don't act, Europe will be condemned, as he said, to the slow agony of decline. And these words, of course, sunk in deep. And this is a development that we, of course, must do anything we can to reverse. And the Union of Skills is part of the EU's response to this dramatic call for action, I think we can say, outlined in our President von der Leyen's political guidelines for the mandate to guide our work in revitalizing indeed the EU's competitiveness. In January, the President presented her competitiveness compass that translated many of Mario Draghi's enablers or key recommendations indeed at its heart, and among what the President calls horizontal enablers, we have the Union of Skills. And the Union of Skills showcases the central role, in case anybody here, and I don't think it's the case, but in case any of us needed to be convinced of the of education and training and the role that that has for powering and sustaining European growth. And of course, with the Union of Skills, we are not starting from scratch. Already in 2019, with the backing of European leaders, President von der Leyen, she outlined her ambition for a renewed European education policy. And since then, we've had the European education area as the EU's guiding framework for action, steering our efforts to ensure inclusive access to high quality education and training for all, and to help people gain skills throughout their lives so that they can benefit from the opportunities offered by the green and the digital transition. And with targets, sorry, I just lost my script here, but with targets for early childhood education and care, basic skills, higher education and adult learning, and a shared vision for European education and training by 2030. And to get there, President von der Leyen, she gave a clear mandate to the Commission, and indeed in the new Commission to Executive Vice President Mînzatu. And I'm sure that Vanessa, that you will hear from in a moment, who is a member of the Executive Vice President's team, will tell us more about this in a short while. Indeed, with the Union of Skills, we're seizing the new mandate with both hands to build on existing achievements, of course, but also to raise our ambition to a new level. And basically, we want to bring in a new focus and to advance at a higher speed. In the first half of this year, the Commission will publish an evaluation on the European education area, and this report will inform member states' review on how we can act more effectively within the European education area, building on results, but also drawing lessons on the past 5 years of work. And the Union of Skills will take this work one step, and I would say even several steps further, because the strategy now brings new targets and with them a new level of ambition. They include new goals for science, for technology, engineering and mathematics, the so-called STEM education, and for digital skills. The Union of Skills outlines how we will do things differently by revamping the governance of our cooperation on education and skills, and by placing analysis and intelligence on skills gaps at the heart of our work. And it proposes combining a variety of funding sources, both under the current and the next long-term EU budget, to give us more tools and more resources to guide member states in their work. And this includes leveraging the European semester process. The Union of Skills is a truly collaborative project and one that cannot succeed without our social partners, including all of you online with us today, because the strategy calls indeed for all schools, universities, training institutions, civil society, but also private companies and employers to play an active role, as well as, of course, teachers, educators, and learners of all ages too. And this partnership is essential to overcome the skills gaps and labor shortages that Europe currently faces in sectors that are defining for our future prosperity. We need to fully seize our human capital potential to reinvigorate the EU's competitiveness, and therefore we count on your efforts and on your commitment to make the Union of Skills a success as a real community-driven process. The high priority that is given to education and skills in the new Commission will be underpinned by concrete action and support, but at the end of the day, it will be our education and training community that realizes the Union of Skills. So with this in mind, there are two components of the strategy that I'd like to really just zoom in on briefly. The action plan on basic skills, firstly, and then secondly, the STEM education strategic plan, because these two components in particular empower Europe's education and skills community to help leading the way. So firstly, the action plan on basic skills. As you know, reading, writing, science and maths, and increasingly also digital and citizen skills are the foundations for any further learning. They are key to our success, and unfortunately, at the moment, a reason behind our shortcomings. And today, we stand further away from achieving our targets of less than 15% of 15-year-olds underachieving in basic skills than we did 10 years ago. And compared to Canada, to Japan, the UK, and the US, the EU has a lower top performance rate in reading and science, and the second lowest in maths. And there's monitoring here in the EU that shows that 43% of 13 to 14-year-olds don't possess even basic digital skills. Quite surprising when we all know how important a role the screen, the phone play in our teenagers' lives. While citizenship skills, including media literacy, are even more essential in a world with increasing levels of disinformation, which serves to polarize our societies. So clearly, problems start early, and that's why we need to fix them early. Too many primary school pupils are struggling. Insufficient basic skills in vocational education and training, and among adults, are equally worrying. So we need to act at all levels in a lifelong learning perspective. We need to act now to support 18 million underachieving pupils and 47.7 million low qualified adults. These shortfalls, they seriously threaten the EU's capacity to innovate and Europe's long-term competitiveness, and as well as reducing people's ability to actively and consciously participate in democratic life, which is, of course, an extremely important factor at this time. So we need to support them to master digital literacy, numeracy, and understand foundational science, as well as to have citizenship skills like critical thinking, entrepreneurship, and creativity. So to address this, the Action Plan on Basic Skills focuses on both excellence and inclusion, and it proposes a range of short to medium-term actions for the EU and its member states. It's an action plan that targets in particular learners, educators, and policymakers, as well as parents and the wider skills community. So all the actors that have a role here, including, of course, employers. And it outlines measures in three main areas. I'll be brief because time is advancing: boosting basic skills, teaching and learning, supporting educators, and then these enabling supportive environments, which are so important to make it happen. And so to get the action going and accelerated, we will pilot a basic skills support scheme that we will scale up later on. We intend to launch the scheme next year. Of course, a lot of preparatory work has already been launched to provide tailor-made support to help boost people's basic skills, indeed from those pupils to those in initial vocational education and training and in adult learning, so across the board. And this year we will draw up some guidelines for policymakers and member states so they can frame the work. And as a first step before launching the scheme in full, as I was saying, next year. And that's just one of the number of measures that you, I'm sure, have seen also detailed in the action plan. And I invite you to read the strategy to discover all these actions we have designed. And of course, we will roll them out throughout the next months and the next years. Let me briefly mention the second part of the Union of Skills that I'm zooming in on today. There are many others. I'm sure you will discuss them with Vanessa. The STEM Education Strategic Plan, which we have also particularly been busy working on here in DG Education and Culture. Building on the bedrock of basic skills, so-called STEM skills are vital to the EU's ability to innovate, and they're essential to spurring this productive growth that I signaled is so important when I started my introduction. So let me highlight in this context that we are setting up a STEM executive panel that will bring together both political leaders and businesses so that they can advise on the key strategic issues and the solutions that they are expecting us to bring, like curriculum modernization, how we address the most pressing skills gaps, and strengthen our cooperation between education and business. So I see particularly strong possibilities also for our social partners to engage in this part of the strategy. And I encourage you to reach out also to us here in the Commission to explore how you can get involved. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have made very clear that the Union of Skills belongs to Europe's education, training and skills community, and that it relies on all of us here to fully realize its ambitious vision. But I know that we can count on you, our community, to get there. And since, of course, 2023, the Educational Leadership Network of Europe has already made great contributions to our joint efforts. And I'm really proud that the EU can support you in your work under Erasmus+. And I look very much forward to exploring how together we can turn the tide, regain our competitive edge, and lead the way in the global race for new technologies also, because boosting Europe's competitiveness starts with people. It starts with education and skills, and it moves forward thanks to our great education and training community. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing all your ideas as well.
Thank you very much, Pia, for these words of introduction. I think you have just set a tone of our entire discussion for the next 3 days. As you rightfully said, the task is great, and there's so much things to do, and we still have to do so much, and we have so much to really improve. You say we need to improve the skills of 18 million children and 47 million adults in order for us to get that competitive edge. And yes, from our side, from the side of the educational community, you can certainly count on us in order to really strengthen that voice. As you rightfully said, education has to be very prominent in this task, and we need to be involved. We are very happy indeed to have you here with us and to have that support from the Commission to gather this, let's say, formal education provision organization and network to support this policy work. Now, I wanted to move on with our next speaker. We have had some difficulties when it comes to technical problems, but I hope that Vanessa can now hear us. So I wanted to introduce Vanessa Debiais-Sainton from the cabinet of Roxana Mînzatu, our Executive Vice President of the European Commission. Vanessa, first of all, warm welcome. Thank you very much for being with us. And first of all, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Very good.
So Vanessa actually decided to take the challenge and to be exposed to my piercing questions. So we have prepared that a little bit to kind of, because I really wanted to speak to people from the Commission, from the Cabinet, and from the Commissioner herself about this extraordinary vision, the vision of establishing the fifth fundamental freedom, which is the freedom of the movement of skills, that Roxana Mînzatu has announced to us just on the 5th of March. The Union of Skills has been published, and well, we have many questions. Vanessa, first of all, the questions from the education community is, how is that different from what has been already set up? How are you planning to organize it right now for the time to come, and how does it really differ from what we have been experiencing so far?
Yes, thanks a lot for your question, Daniel. Very relevant. First, maybe I would like to remind what are we aiming at and what are the key issues that we want to address. So first, this is a very important package, the Union of Skills, that has been presented in the first 100 days after the competitiveness compass. And it's very important to look at it globally, the competitiveness compass and the union of skills, that is the human capital, the human face, to be able to achieve the objectives of the competitiveness compass. And why is it needed? Because we see three shortcomings that Pia has also addressed before. One is a skills gap, and Pia explained very clearly the gap that we have when it comes to basic skills, but we have a gap as well when it comes to more advanced skills, including digital skills. Only half of the population have the basic digital skills that are needed in the jobs now and in the future. The second challenge is that we have very good education training systems, but they are not agile enough to keep up with the pace of transformation of our society today. So that is the second challenge that we need to address. And the third one is a fragmented governance. Skills is under the responsibility of different departments, different ministries, different services, between be it at European, national, or institutional level. And this is where I would say is the biggest change in what we propose in addressing this fragmented governance. So let me start with that. What we are proposing is a new and hopefully more efficient governance than in the past, bringing together education and employment policies with a completely new governance system at European level, and we hope that it will trickle down as well at all the other levels. So what we propose is basically a new European skills high-level board, where the objective is to bring at the same table CEOs, so the world of employment, together with social partners, together with education training institutions, to look at the situation where we are, where are the gaps, but also what are the foresights. And for this, we need evidence. Evidence, we have quite a number of evidence today, but again, they are fragmented. So at local level, regional level, sectoral level, but also at national European level. So the objective is also to build a European Skills Intelligence Observatory, to bring together what are the gaps that we have identified in different sectors, in energy, in electricity, in automotive, in health, in all the different sectors of the economy, but also the needs at national but also regional levels. There are many different needs depending on the regions, and we also need to be much more stronger in terms of forecast. What are the needs in the future? Especially when we see the rapid evolution of our society with the new technological evolutions, with artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, but also looking at the decarbonization and looking at the clean industrial deal that the Commission has proposed some weeks ago. So we need to look at these all together. So a strong data driven, and then also bring the key actors on the ground to have a more efficient way of addressing the situation and in a more quicker way. And the third element that is very important is that it is very high on the political agenda of the head of state and head of governments. So that is why there is also the proposal to present a European recommendation for all the EU, all the member states on this human capital. So all this taken together is one of the biggest change of this package, together with what has presented Pia before, and according 4 strands. So Pia presented very well the first strand, which is about addressing the skills gap. We have also a second strand on upskilling and reskilling, very important, with a new, we will pilot a skills guarantee to make sure that the workers at risk of restructuration can be supported to be able to find a job in another sector. The third pillar, and I'm sure you will want to discuss it more in depth in the circulation, as you said, the free flow of talent and of knowledge across the EU. And the fourth strand is how to make Europe a pole of attraction of talent worldwide and how to retain our own talent in Europe. So thanks a lot for inviting us to discussing it today, Daniel.
All right, just a follow-up question, because obviously this entire agenda seems very ambitious. Now, myself as a person who has been here for 15 years in Brussels, I can tell you that one thing that worries me is the fact that indeed you're mentioning here we're going to do a different governance, and that's fine. Now the question is, how are you going to encompass that governance, having in mind that education policies is a completely national competence, whereas, well, employment policies, there is a significant mandate that the Commission does have. And of course, if you're also trying to link it with the internal market and internal market policies where you do have a competence, so my question is, how can you really establish a single governance structure in 3 different levels of competences that Commission has? Isn't that worrisome for you as well? Have you considered this?
Of course, we have considered this, and it's clear that education is a member state competence, and we will not step on the competence of the member states. But this governance, if you want, brings together all the different responsibilities in the member states in terms of employment, education, and economy, which we do not have today. And we have seen it last year with the European Year of Skills, where for the first time my colleagues could see some ministries in the same country speaking to each other. So this is what we want to bring about. So that also at national level, the ministries can better cooperate together to take quicker action. And the objective is also to link this new governance with the European semester, which is where, if you want, the member states propose the reforms, the urgent reforms that are necessary, covering all their field of competency. And this is where Europe can add value, is to build bridges between all these different policies that are so important, and at European level, where Europe has a competence, is to really make sure that the added value that we will bring will be the right one for supporting the member states. You said education, it's a national competence, and rightly so. But we have still some instruments at European level that can help building the bridges, for example, when it comes to recognition. If we want a real free flow of talent and a free flow of knowledge, we need to address the issue of recognition of skills, of qualifications within the European Union. Because and this is a very urgent issue to be addressed altogether.
All right, thank you. Okay, now having all this in mind, what in your vision or on the vision of Madam Mînzatu is the role of European education area? Because so far for the last 10 years, from Commissioner Navracsics, who announced that I think 10 years ago, we have been operating in the field of European education area, which was of course based on what is called open method of coordination, with interest groups, with expert groups, bringing colleagues from the ministries and some stakeholders from Brussels and also beyond, to lead these policy developments. One thing that indeed we are worried as an educational community here at the European level is that with the Union of Skills, this setup will be lost. What is the vision of Commissioner Mînzatu when it comes to to the European education area, the open method of coordination, the expert groups that have been working for the last 10 years and even more? Do you see the future of those, or those structures will also change?
Thank you, Daniel. So indeed, a lot has been achieved and a lot of progress has been made with the European education area. At the same time, we need to bring education closer to employment and closer to the economy. And this is what we want to propose with the Union of Skills, is the European Education Act to be a key enabler of the Union of Skills, but with some changes. The Commission is going to present a review of the European education area by the summer. And it is very important to take the time to make this review and to take the lessons learned from what has worked and what has less worked. So to keep what has worked well and to adapt where there is room for improvement. It's true that we have a lot of working groups, expert groups that have been developed across the last 10 years. Let's be honest and have a honest review of all these groups. Maybe some have worked better than others. Do we still need all these groups? Because the situation today is not the situation than 10 years ago. And what are the groups that are necessary to drive our agenda forward based on Union of Skills? And this is what we need and what we want to discuss with all of you. And we will take the time to discuss it with all of you before presenting the implementation of the governance that has been presented in the Union of Skills. So that is why you do not see all the details in the communication, precisely because we want to take the time for the review of the European Education Act, and we want to take the time to discuss with all of you how to bring it forward together with the Union of Skills. So we need a new education and skills governance together.
Mm-hmm. And finally, I wanted to also ask you about the funding scheme, because obviously right now there's a discussion about the multi-annual financial framework. Of course, there's discussions in the corridors, nothing is yet published, and obviously there's a lot of interest groups and stakeholders involved, but we do hear some gossip so far. I cannot really maybe share it here or openly, but we are indeed I think that I will speak on behalf of the entire ELNE community, where we can, and I think I can say that here, that we are a bit worried that the education sector will be somehow subordinated to the objectives of the skills and skills agenda and let's say skills development and so on. We consider ourselves fundamental in this, and we are indeed worried that this education part of the Union of Skills is sort of weaker than the other parts. But how do you, can you share anything with us when it comes to funding scheme? Is there anything that you can share at this point? We hear all kinds of gossip about the Erasmus program, and this gossip ranges from, you know, Erasmus being bigger on the one hand, and on the other hand, Erasmus being closed and merged with another funds. And these are, of course, two extreme gossips that we have heard. Anything that you can share with us about this? Is there any future for the funding? And finally, the question about this, will education stakeholders have to compete with private companies and other stakeholders when it comes to funding for all kinds of education level projects, whether they are non-formal, informal, or formal education sector?
Thanks a lot for expressing your concerns, and that's very, very important. First, we are not opposing education skills. The objective of the Union of Skills is to bring them together, to make them stronger. And I hope that you have seen how much education is at the center of the Union of Skills. So this should be reflected in the funding instruments. The first what you do is to present a strategy. And this is what the Commission has presented in these first 100 days, with the Competitiveness Compass, with the Clean Industrial Deal, with the Union of Skills. So that is our vision, that is our strategy for the mandate, where you can see education is at the center. Now, of course, the next MFF needs to reflect these policies, because the next MFF is there to support the implementation of these strategies and of these policies. So the first objective of our Executive Vice President Roxana Mînzatu was to get policy and the strategy right at the center. And we are there. We are there in the first 100 days, together with the competence compass. So here, that is already an excellent first achievement. Now, the next pattern is to be there in the next MFF, of course. But you cannot be there if you don't have a clear strategy. See what I mean? So now we need to translate this strategy in the future instruments. You have seen that in the mission letter of our executive vice president is clearly written to strengthen the Erasmus Plus program. This is part of the political guidelines of our president as well. So Erasmus Plus cannot disappear. Yeah? If there is one program that is mentioned in the political guidelines in the mission letter, it is Erasmus Plus. It's not the case for all the programs. So that should give you already reassurance that this is a core mission of our executive vice president. Now, of course, we need to discuss together, and our colleagues have consulted a lot, and that was a wonderful event organized in February by DGAC with all the key stakeholders to discuss the future of Erasmus+, because it's important. This program is your program. So we want to continue to shape it together with you and together with all the stakeholders. Now, of course, we need to have also here again an open discussion, an honest discussion on what we want the future Erasmus Plus to be. It cannot be business as usual because we are not in a situation of business as usual. So we need to reflect how do we want the Erasmus Plus program to be in the future, to be even more efficient in supporting our policies, and our policy is the union of skills.
Thank you for that. We do have some minutes for questions from the audience, and I see in the chat that there are some questions already. I decided to pick the most difficult one, obviously. That's part of my charm. So there's a question about, in fact, the recent actions of the Commission. The Commission indeed announced the establishment of two high-level groups, one high-level group on board on STEM skills, and one is the high-level skills board, and the other is STEM skills platform, if that's correct. And now, the person from the chat is asking, okay, both of them, and this is a quote, are led mostly by companies. What are the expectations from the companies, and what is the impact they will have on shaping initial public education, where the education actors are to be placed in the governance? And that actually falls into the question I wanted to ask you, whether we as an ELNE community can be reassured in one way or another, as an ELNE representing formal education provision, especially in the school sector, can we be reassured that we will be invited to participate in those boards as the representatives of the education sector?
So we have first these high-level skills board. This is the overarching board, all right, where you will have companies, CEOs addressing, look, these are our needs today, but in the future. The forecast, the foresight is very important, and we need to hear it directly from the world of employment. But we also want at this table to have education training organizations who are the ones delivering, in charge of delivering the skills that the labor market needs in the future. And we want as well at the table the social partners. So everybody will be at the table. Okay, so that is very important. And we want all of them to speak together directly without any intermediaries to be able to take efficient and speedy enough reforms, actions to be able to address the issues that Europe is facing. So we are not opposing companies or education. It's not that one will have a bigger role than the other. They all need to play their role at equal level. And that is the objective. Now, we have the STEM. And here in the STEM Education Strategic Plan, we have proposed indeed a STEM executive panel. The STEM executive panel would report to the high level, to the European high level skills board. Okay, it's just, if you want, a subgroup, but very important because we have an issue with them. What is the issue with them? The future jobs we need more graduates, more people with skills in STEM, because we have a society that is going to evolve with more and more technology. So we need to have more and more people able to develop and to master this new technology. But these new technologies need to be developed in interdisciplinary way. Yeah? So I would like here to take this opportunity to emphasize the importance of the STEAM approach. We cannot develop new technologies without being aware of the ethics and the importance of the ethics, for example. All right. So and we need as well more women in STEM. We need to activate all the population in this, and women have a key role to play. So that is why we have proposed, as Pierre mentioned before, new targets in STEM, including a gender dimension to attract more women in STEM. Mm-hmm. So that is why there was a dedicated and very specific focus on that, that it will report back to the European High-Level Skills Board.
Mm-hmm. Well, I take this diplomatic answer as a yes. I really hope that indeed ELNE community will be invited to that high-level board, especially if indeed this table won't be very big. I can imagine that if you will have cross-sectoral social partners, I feel like there might be maybe 2 educational representatives there at tops. So we are very worried, and we really hope that we could somehow be part of it. Within this community and this network, we always try to stress the importance of skills provision and the basic skills, including basic skills. We, in fact, in that community, we try to call basic skills as fundamental skills, as in fact, without those basic fundamental skills, well, there's nothing else you can really do with it. If you do not know basic math, or you are not able to read properly, any other development or any other acquirement of skills necessary for the labor market won't be possible. So we really hope that somehow our voice will be heard, and we can be invited to that board as well to represent that formal education provision voice. Well, Vanessa, thanks a lot for this. I hope indeed that those piercing questions weren't too hard, and thank you very much for taking the challenge.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your invitation, and to see all of you online. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. So after listening to Director General and the cabinet member, now we have a food for thought for the entire 3 days. I think I tried really to get as much as I can out of them to have the information we need, and to see, how we as formal education stakeholders can respond to it, because I feel that certain responses will be, and coordinated responses will be necessary. But before we do that, I wanted also to welcome the key stakeholders in this network. I have with me Petra van Haren from the European School Heads Association. I have with me John McGovern from the European Trade Union Committee for Education. I have with me Giuseppina Tucci from the Students' Voice, OBESU, and Rodrigo Melo, Vice President of the European Federation of Education Employers. Well, first of all, my first question for you really would be, to take the floor and see what are your expectations of this next coming 3 days. I will start with John McGovern from Ireland. He's the president of the European Trade Union Committee for Education. So John, what are your expectations for the next 3 days? And yes, the floor is yours for the opening remarks.
Well, if I can catch my breath after having it taken away by some of the issues raised in relation to the Union of Skills, I suppose first and foremost, the purpose, the overall purpose of our gathering is consistent. It is ensuring that students at all levels in an inclusive environment across a broad curriculum get the opportunity on an individual level in the first instance to exploit and realize their potential to the greatest extent. So I think we do need, and I will come back to this very shortly again, we do need to understand that education as it transacts for the individual child is an individual experience, and an experience that that is hugely related to that child's context. So that's the first thing. Second thing, all of us therefore who are in a position of influence or leadership should bend our efforts towards ensuring that the experience is rich for each individual child. And if we do that, by extension, we make it a rich experience for the community from which that child comes and for our societies more broadly. I suppose also and as now I'm speaking in terms of the education trade union movement, we will see at all points what we have always seen, that is education as a human right and a social good, part of an intrinsic part of the social contract, inalienably linked with the social contract. In that regard, we believe that for education to achieve what it can achieve, it has to be trust-based. And a trust-based education system necessarily involves certain structures, and one of those structures, a very important one, is social dialogue. Social dialogue at the international level, but also, and very importantly, social dialogue at the national and the institutional level. And that social dialogue has to be a meeting of equals who will seek common purpose, as I say, with the context of their students in mind. And what is it that we provide students with? Well, I suppose it sounds a bit reductionist, but I'll stick with the word nonetheless. We provide them with a curriculum, and a curriculum is a compendium of what society regards as important for them to have exposure to or to learn. And I'm going to go now to maybe some observations on the union of skills. To a degree, I suppose, Daniel, echoing some of your concern, I do not see so far that education is central in this tripartite arrangement with employment and the economy that has been posited. If education is to be the driver of this, or a singular driver of this, then the fundamental values of education must be absolutely expressed in whatever structures emerge. And in terms of governance, you posited that you might have two, perhaps, from the education sector on the high-level panel. What I heard was CEOs. Now, CEOs, it is their job, and they're exceedingly well paid for it, to be profit motivated. My job is not to be profit motivated. I don't disdain profit, but it's not my job. And it's not the job of any educational leader here, and it's not the job of any teacher. So what we do not want is a union of skills that fundamentally alters the balance and makes education simply a means towards, if you like, economic contrivance or economic improvement. It should, of course, seek to ensure that our economies are stronger, but it should seek to do that by focusing on maximizing the potential, the use of the potential of each individual. I would have a concern as well that in relation to the union of skills, there is already a significant focus on attracting, as it were, the best and the brightest. That is, of course, a good thing, provided it is not at the expense of producing a rich and highly defined and well-supported public education system that is inclusive of everybody. So, for example, I would have a concern that those areas which we have in our various jurisdictions given particular prominence to, and quite correctly in recent years, the inclusion of students with additional needs, the inclusion of students with special needs, will somehow be lost in the rush towards, if you like, giving priority to economic advancement. And just the last comment I'll make for the moment is that I would have a real concern about curricular integrity. What must not be done is the adoption of a reductionist view of what constitutes the important things in life. A reductionist view, for example, that has not so far included at any point that I have heard a reference to cultural enrichment, a reference to the arts. There was one mention made of ethics. Now, I suppose I'm conscious as well that, look, there is a creeping across the Atlantic. There are several threats to Europe, but one of the threats to Europe at the moment is demonstrably from a growing imperialism that is rooted in the political system of the United States at the moment. And the imperialism does what imperialism has always done. It uses corporations. It used to be the East India Company. It is now Meta, or one or other of the great oligarchical companies that are seeking increasingly to prevent the European Union from taking and maintaining regulatory controls that protect our children. Now, if that is the CEO influence that either directly or indirectly will be most reflected in the union of skills, we are in for a battle. And to be frank about it, we would much prefer be in a cooperative environment, but we will, as trade unions and as educationalists, we will fight for the integrity of what we do. We will fight for curricular integrity, and we will fight for the inclusion of all of the students that we have the privilege of serving.
Thank you very much, John. I didn't dare to stop you there. Partly because, you know, it's not a common thing to happen, but I actually agreed with you with most of you, just what you stated. So I felt we have to let this man speak, because that was really a statement. Thanks a lot for that. I move on because we are a bit behind schedule. That's normally is expected when John McGovern takes the floor. 5 minutes is impossible. So I move on to the employers, and Rodrigo Melo is with us from the employers, education employers here. Rodrigo, your opening address.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for all the organizations and people who are organizing the ELNE and the European Education Month. And well, as I think we all feel, and I tend to agree with John, I tend to agree with your questions were in the good direction, Daniel, that I liked what I heard about Mrs. Director General speaking about the need for a powerful knowledge, as Michael Young put it, a strong curriculum, focused curriculum, to make sure that all students in Europe can thrive through their lives. But then I got a little worried with this idea that strengthening Europe and Europe's youth and skills and all that comes from the top down, from the economy into the schools, and not growing from the schools into society. I haven't heard anything about the big difference between primary education, lower secondary, and upper secondary. I hope that all this thing about CEOs and so on has to do with post-secondary education. And so I feel there is something to be said on powerful knowledge, a clear, focused curriculum, and unleashing the potential of schools, school leaders, teachers in educating the young. And so I think we have to make our voice heard. As education employers, of course, when there is a new commission, we are involved in understanding what is the vision. We are worried, as everybody is, with the place of Europe in the world. We are worried with all that is going on political turmoil in the world. But still, as Europeans, we have to focus on the people, on our common values, on aesthetics, ethics, on arts, on still going forward as up to now, showing the rest of the world there is a humane way of developing and living together. And so in my opening statement, I would like to make it very clear that we are very involved in building together, that we want to be heard as stakeholders. And I think that all of the education sector is together in this sense that education is so much more about people and humanity than about the good life. The good life will come as an outcome of good education. And so I am both very happy with the idea of a powerful curriculum, but I am also a little bit worried that people are not taking enough into consideration the position of formal schooling, formal school systems, private schools, independent schools, public schools, teachers, school leaders. We are the hallmark of quality education for all, and we want to go on this way. So thank you very much, and let's go do it together with the parents, the students, the teachers, and the employers.
I think Rodrigo, you probably took this line from me, because my state of mind is normally happy and worried at the same time. So yes, when I hear the recent announcements about the Union of Skills, I'm still happy but worried. And hopefully within the ELNE community, we can find a good way to respond to this as well, and to kind of strengthen that voice of the education sector. To make sure that the education sector is there not as a means to an end, but is a means in itself. And I feel like although there is a kind of at least my feeling is that we are treated a little bit like a means to an end. Our aim here within ELNE to actually, gather this entire community in order to strengthen that voice and say, no, we want to be there in a decision-making role, and not just being told what we shall do for you to have the skills that you need.
Daniel, if I can use the 2 minutes I didn't, I only went for 3 minutes and 12 seconds, just very shortly.
1 minute.
I think what we can help the commission and so on is to find the right balance. We have to be sincere, and we understand that education is for the states. Commission has a lot, and the union has a lot to say about employment and economy. And so we have to help them find the right balance, because the issue is, as politicians, and they want to do things, and they can only do things where they have the power to do, and that's not an education. So it tends then to focus on the economy and the skills and labor and so on. And so we have to help them find the good balance between these two worlds and make them understand that good, solid education, open method of coordination, involving stakeholders, that is the way of then getting what is needed for a stronger economy.
I wouldn't be able to phrase it better than you. As normally Rodrigo is able to put more diplomatically what I wanted to say in the words that are acceptable to a wider audience. No change is actually possible in education without leadership, and we have with us Van Haren from European Students Association. As I said, proper leadership, preparation of leaders on the school level, that's the most important thing. So Petra, what are your expectations for this week? And your thoughts about the recent developments when it comes to the Union of Skills?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Daniel. We are here as ELNE. Now, ELNE, it stands for Educational Leaderships Network Europe. And what leaders do is really discuss everything, give every perspective a voice, and then after good thinking, elaborating, taking data in, having research, working with all people around us, then you can give direction to where we should go, you can give advice, and you can have a real discussion also with the policymakers. And I think this is exactly what ELNE is doing. The lead partners represent the employers, the teachers, the school heads, the students, the parents, and then in this ring, a huge group of educational stakeholders. And what we facilitate is, first of all, that we discuss amongst ourselves important issues. And that's one of the things we will be doing in this webinar week. We give this place to all the voices to expose themselves and actually say what they think about things. And we do not have to agree on this level, because you start a discussion from all these different perspectives, of course, in getting somewhere. And for myself, I have extensive experience in working with corporate businesses as education, yes, with primary education as well. And also ESHA works together with corporate companies. And I think it's because we are in a time shift. A long time ago, education prepared people for the labor market. When the students came from the universities, companies were actually fighting for them because they brought in the new knowledge. We have come into a society that education has become slow. And when our students enter the labor market going to companies, they are not prepared for the techniques and the things that are there. So collaboration is a way of getting closer to each other to actually achieve this, because what's now happening is that companies, they create their own academies, and they actually start with our students a second lifelong learning path, because when they enter, they are not always ready. And that is something we should think about, because also institutions like the European Union, they make policies, and once the policy is done, and I think I heard it this morning, there is a plan now for 4 years, but the real adaptivity in this plan, and the world is changing so fast, as also John said, is the policy changing just as fast as the world is changing around us? And I think we are not. And this is what a leadership network should do. Like, hey, we see what's happening. We see that policy is slow. We see that education is slow, but we are leaders and we realize that we have to speed up. And it's up to us to really be this very annoying party in the politics, telling them what to do and really making it inevitable that they move. Because, and that's also what Rodrigo said, it has to come from the bottom up into the policies. And we are the ones that have to open this door and not take no for an answer. We have been knocking. Maybe we were a little bit too polite in the medieval times. They just took a real big piece of wood and they just opened this door. So I think if we are able to really unite our voice, we can be strong to policies. But I think the other way around, it's also our task as leaders to be really sure that the professionals in education get all the autonomous space that they need to be this professional. Because when the professionals can be strong, this bottom-up movement will start in the classroom. And then we don't have to worry for curricula, because strong educational people will not allow a change in the curriculum. That's not okay. They will be advancing the curriculum because they are professionals, and from their autonomy, they will bring it up. So altogether, I would say we are in a fast changing world. There are coming big investments, for example, in defenses coming towards us. That doesn't need only soldiers, that needs a lot of people with skills to actually support what's happening. And we need to realize this. Leaders need to discuss this. And we need, of course, to have a vision on it, because what's happening is not always good, but sometimes it's happening. And I think the ELNE network is one of the very important possibilities to actually create this strong voice and to be adaptive and to bring in new leadership on behalf of education, on behalf of formal education. And I'm very happy that ESHA is a part of this network, that we work together in a way that has not been done before with both the employers and the parents and the students and the teachers' organizations. Because if we can show that collaborating instead of being competitors is the true force, then I think that's what I expect of this webinar week. A bit firework, a bit really different opinions about a lot of things, and that will bring us ahead. Because as we say, The lantern only shines when you have a lot of polishing to do. So let's shine this beautiful webinar week and be leaders the way we are meant to be. Thank you.
And let's break that door, isn't it? That you said. Thank you, Petra. Let's break that door so we can actually be there when the decisions are taken. No education can take place without students, and so of course in this network on formal education provision we could not invite colleagues from OBESO, from the Secondary Students Union. I have with me Giuseppina. Giuseppina, what are your thoughts about the Union of Skills, the new direction that the Commission is taking, and maybe your expectations as well about this week that is ahead of us?
Wow, I could start a bit like John did, saying I need to catch my breath. Don't know why I'm drinking coffee after the speeches of this morning. I should have gone for a chamomile. I came here with very nice notes, and now they're all full of red. So I'm gonna try to keep it short and simple and give you my two cents, let's say. I think in terms of expectations for the next 3 days, I expect creation of more and more intelligence and points of view and really cooperation around the issue of how do we bring education further away from the economy, actually. Not in a sense that I don't think the economy is irrelevant or access to employment is irrelevant, but how do we actually continue going on the path that many of you were mentioning, Daniel, you said it very well, education as a mean in itself, and Johnny also mentioned it as a human right, as a common good. I think this is what I expect from these days, really to continue debating education in this direction, and how can we then actually bring this forward and in front of European institutions, considering the direction that we're going towards. Because you see, we represent school students, right? So we represent a target group that's extremely marginalized, extremely tokenized, and very often not taken into account. We represent those that you bring into debate because you have to bring a young person into a debate, but you don't actually need to listen to them, right? And I feel like finally you can all get what we feel every day of our lives. We are all starting to be those tokens of participation and inclusion. Our role is taken by the CEOs, and finally we have to reinforce a bit our presence there. For stronger social dialogue, for stronger governmental recognition of students and students' interest, and yeah, with social partners, but also with all those other stakeholders that are not social partners, but that do matter in the education training setting. Now, I could really go on to everything. I think I had 3 points I wanted to make. The first one is really, how do we take this week to discuss, as I said before, the role of education not in solving the democratic crisis, but in countering the democratic crisis we are facing and we will be facing over and over in the future. We need education to reinvigorate Europe. I was saying this morning, yes, we do, but we do not need it to reinvigorate in terms of competition economically. Of course, that's one thing that I don't think we can ever stop, and I don't think it doesn't matter, but we need to first focus on keeping Europe together as such, because if we do continue on this road, I don't think we're going to have a European Union to look for a European Union of skills much further in the future. So this is the competition that we need to look for, the democratic competition. How do we compete? I mean, now the bar is very low, but we still need to try to stay on top of that bar. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is, how do we rethink education and rethink skills? We need to go very much beyond this narrative on the best and the brightest. Just what John was saying, it best and brightest doesn't bring us far, but all and at the same level of education, at the same level of quality education, this will bring education that competitive edge that we need. The competition that Europe can have compared to, I mean, Pia was mentioning the results of basic skills that they have in the US and Japan, but the US and Japan, the American and Japanese culture are extremely competitive. The mental health of students in both countries is extremely at risk. Young people in those countries are not happy. They are not. They are facing higher mental health challenges, and this, I think, is extremely important to keep into account. We need to rethink the way we assess skills what are these basic skills? Is digital skills advanced basic skills? No, they are basic skills. And the way that we assess how someone is digitally literate is very often a bit boomer in itself, and is very often against those very same criteria that we fight in Obesu, for example. So we are not very big fans of PISA tests. We can tell you why in another moment, but indeed this standardized testing, and this leads to teaching to testing, and this leads to worsening of mental health in young people and students. And right now we don't need this. We need to counter that. We need young people to be at their best, to be able to actually, and this is what brings me further. I mean, I really think, CEOs have nothing to bring in skills forecasting. CEOs are people at the end of their career, old people sitting in a room, making lots of money, and they have already achieved their full potential, right? What do we care about them? Nothing. Who created the new jobs that we're living in right now? Young people. Could a CEO have imagined that an influencer would be a job that right now in certain countries is being discussed how to tax and remunerate and include social security for these people? No, because this is not created by a CEO, but rather by a young person. So actually what we need to invest in is education and lifelong learning. And I will stop here, so that we actually can create the skills of tomorrow, because skills do not need to be forecasted. They need to be created, co-created, and they need to be assessed with in cooperation with school students and with the other actors. There are so many beautiful examples of collaborative evaluation that we could learn from so much and put in practice. And I touched on 3 of the 75 million points I wanted to touch on, but 30 seconds to take what we take with us is really that we want to ensure that the Union of Skills is governed by the same richness and variety of stakeholders that are in this room today, and that we have a long road to go in convincing people that we are the CEOs that need to sit. We are the CEOs of our own stakeholder groups, and we need to sit in those boardrooms just as much as those ones coming from industry. So voila, this is a bit my 2 cents. Very confused. And Agnes was, I saw in the chat, because I couldn't manage to touch on digital skills, but this afternoon we have a very interesting webinar on the same topic. So if you want to learn more, it's at 4.
Thank you very much, Giuseppina. Thank you very much for breaking the system. If you want some fireworks, you invite Giuseppina over to say a few words, and then, she will turn down the table. Thanks a lot for that. Well, finally, the organization that I have a particular weakness for, the European Parents Association, and Victor Petuia is with us with some difficulties, but he managed. So, Victor, what are your expectations? What are your thoughts about the Union of Skills and expectations for this week? I think we can't hear you. No, we cannot hear you. Well, so sorry. I don't know how we should go about it. Is there any other computer that you can connect yourself? We have well 5 minutes really to finish. I really cannot hear you. Not at all. I'm so sorry. Well, I can tell you on behalf of the Parents Association, parents are important. I'm a parent, and certainly there's no education without parents. And we need to be involved in everything that is related to education, curriculum design as well, because ultimately these are our kids. And yes, we are the main educators and the primary educators of our children. Isn't that right, Giuseppina? You were laughing a bit. Yes, correct. Well, Victor, I'm so sorry. I would love you to speak, but unfortunately there is some technical difficulty after all. I tried to kind of cover up for you in my
I was laughing with you, Daniel. I was saying, we have been talking so much with each other that we could actually just switch shoes and one day try to talk for each other and see what we actually learned.
We should do it as an exercise, One day you will speak on behalf of employees and I will speak on behalf of students, and then we will see. Well, anyway, thank you very much for this session. Really, I think a lot of inspiration, a lot of thoughts, and what I really do see is a lot of synergies between us. We might be coming from different stakeholders groups, and yet we have so much common denominators there that actually shows the power of this network. And I think that the most important thing about this week is that we indeed, as Petra said, We need to listen to each other. We may differ, but in fact, even from this opening ceremony, we see that there's lots of synergies and common denominators. And I feel that the main message from this week needs to be that education has to be part of that discussion when it comes to the union of skills. And mostly, I think that after this event, probably what we should certainly try to do is to make sure that that we are invited there to actually discuss with those CEOs, so to make sure that this education voice is actually heard. Thanks a lot for all this. Stay with us. We will have a break now, and our next sessions are going to follow in, I think, 15 minutes, is it? So thanks a lot for that, and we see you in a couple of minutes.